Hey everyone, this is Daniel, and in today's video we're going to deep dive into the Power Automate start and wait for an approval, and we're going to use SharePoint as the backend data source that triggers the flow. But first, here's my intro video. So as I deep dive into this video, the 5 key things that I want to focus on are over here, and they are the approval types, the details, which is basically the subject or the body of the email, the attachment links, response option types, and simultaneously. And what that simultaneously means, I'll explain that to you in a little bit over here. So that's basically the 5 things. Now let's jump into the demo. Now, one of the things which I want to first focus on quickly is the SharePoint list, which is in the back end. So this is a list. This is not a document library, okay? This is a list. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take out the settings over here, and I go into the list settings. And here are basically the column types. The title is there by default. The modified and created are the ones which are automatically created by SharePoint, so you don't have to do that. And then there is the approvers. The approvers is a person or group. And then there's a comments and rejected. And these are again multiple lines of text. For the approvals though, I want to show you that over here, I've selected a allow multiple selections. And the reason I'm doing the allow multiple selections is so that I can add multiple approvers over there. And then we'll be able to capture that through the flow and the SharePoint. All right, so that was the key thing over here on the SharePoint list side. I'm using SharePoint as a backend database, which is important, because there's so much more that comes along with it. However, I don't want to emphasize too much on that because this is basically all that it is. It's just the SharePoint list. And the ID column is the one which is automatically created by SharePoint. So again, nothing to be too focused on. Now, one thing I'm going to show you as a trick later on is this title column. It by default goes ahead and makes it as a required one. And I'll go ahead and make it unrequired because that'll save you a step and potentially a lot of heartache in the flow set. And I'll explain that to you when we get over there. So let's go ahead and start building the flow, all right? So I'm going to come over here now. I'm going to create a new flow. I'm going to go ahead and say, yep, this is an automated cloud flow. My trigger is going to be SharePoint when a new item is created. And I'm going to call this as a demo for wait for response. Okay, so I'm going to create that. And you can also skip it over here and skip that there. You can come back over here and just file all the information. But that's the easy part. I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on the fun part. All right, so when a new item is created, again, that's what we did as a trigger. I come over here now and I go ahead and select my site address. My site address is the POC one, which I've used for so many examples. And then I go ahead and come and pick up my SharePoint, the list name, which in here was called as concurrent approval steps. So I go ahead and call that. And now we've at least gone ahead and taken care of the trigger piece. Nothing else that has to be done. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and now initialize a few variables. And there's actually 4 different types of variables I'm going to go ahead and initialize. The first ones I want to go and take care of is the links. Now I do want to pause and talk over here for a second, is that why in this video I'm focusing on links. And I'm not going to show you if actually attach the attachment, like the Word doc, PowerPoint, whatever, attach it to the email or the notification that's going on. The reason I prefer links is, first of all, a specific scenario when the emails are going to your internal company employees, the employees which will have access to that SharePoint list or wherever the documents are getting saved. The reason I do that is because then attachments don't go flying around in your emails, because that can cause a lot of load on your emails over there. But a big problem is that it can also go ahead and cause potential copyrights issues or potential data, which is your data, getting lost if it goes ahead and gets sent outside your company. So that can be a problem over there, which is why I personally, as long as I know that this flow is going to be inside the company, use links a lot. Because if a person doesn't have access to that data over there or that link, even though if the email was forwarded to somebody who was not part of this project or flow, whatever, if the email was forwarded to them, they don't have access to the list. So you're still secure and still safe over there. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not showing it over here. But in general, as long as it's inside the company, I just don't use attachments. I use links over here. All right. So that is why I'm using the links. Now I'm going to go ahead and start creating some of these variables. So actually there's 4. So let's go ahead and generate those really fast. I'm going to go ahead and do the increment variable. and there's 4 over here. So the first one I'm going to do is just not increment. Did I use increment? I wanted to use initialize. So I come back over here. I just search for var, and then you can click on variable, so you can go ahead and select over here. Neat thing is, if you select that variable, then the search which you do over here now is only searching inside. So right now, if I just do initialize, it picks that up. So there's, you know, pros and cons for doing either one of them. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say the initialize attachment link. Actually, the name is going to be attachment URL var, and I'm going to just call this as initialize the attachment link, and I'm going to count that as a string, and that's that. Next, go ahead and do another one of those. I'll just go ahead and call that as variable. Now I know what it is. I'm just going to go ahead and say initialize variable. Next one is for the initialize the name, because we got the attachment name, attachment link. I'm going to go ahead and get the attachment name. Again, it is the link. It's the string. Go ahead and put the name over there. Name, I'm going to call that as the attachment name var. Now 2 more that I want to go ahead and do, and that is called to initialize the approvers and those that have rejected. Now the reason I want to do that is because we're going to talk about the using the approval thing. And the neat thing about the approval thing, the approval process, or the step over there, is it has the functionality to capture a lot of metadata as well. Because when you're going and approving, it will give you the options to go and say, hey, are you approving it or reject it? Well, you can capture that. What did the user reject? And there's other metadata over there, like the comments. You can go and capture that as well. So that's why I'm going ahead and I'm going to use some of these variables over there to capture that information. And in this case, specifically, who did what? Who went and approved it? Who went and captured it? That's my focus over here. So now the next 2 variables is specifically to do that, is that who are the ones who went and approved it, and who are the ones who went ahead and rejected it. So again, I'm going to go ahead and go to variables, and in the variables, I'm going to go ahead and now initialize the variable. It's going to be a string type, and over here it's going to be to approval var initialize approvals. Next, again, variable initialize the variable, initialize rejected variable, rejected var, and string. So we're doing good. I'm just going to go ahead and save it now. Next, let's go ahead and get the attachments that is put in, because what I want to do is I'm going to put the links over there. But in order to do that, when an item is created doesn't actually get me that information. So I need to use another step over here, and that step is to go ahead and get from SharePoint, and SharePoint has something called as get attachments. So I go and type that SharePoint over here. Now I select SharePoint, and here I just type in get. Now there is confusions over here as to sometimes you use it, is it the get item or get items or get attachment? Now I'm very specifically saying it is get attachments. That's the one that you want to select over here. And then for that, you go ahead and again go ahead and put the site address, which in my case was the POC one, the list one, which is the exact same one where the data is getting saved, and then you apply the ID. The ID comes from the one where the item was created, and that's as easy as that. Next, we're going to go ahead and do another apply to each, but here's what I'm using an apply to each, but I'm not going to add an apply to each. And here's how it makes it easier, because if you go into an apply to each, when I go and add actually the other steps over there, it generates its own apply to each. So that's why I say that don't put your apply to each first, because it's going to generate that automatically. So I'll show you what that means. All right, so now that I've done the get attachments over here, I'm going to now set the value of those variables. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to go to variables, go to now set variable, and the first variable that I'm going to set is the attachment name. When I click over here, we are going to go ahead and call the display name. It's the get attachments and the display name. And the moment I do that, it automatically goes and puts that in the apply to each. See, I kind of told you that, because if I go ahead and put the apply to each, it goes ahead and puts in a second apply to each, and then you got to drag it and drop it and mix a whole bunch of chaos over there. This is a very important thing for you to know, because I know when you are viewing this video, you're going to try to replicate exactly what you're seeing over there, which means I bet the first time you will and accidentally put that apply to each, and then you will go ahead and do the dragging inside of setting the variable, and another apply to each will be added inside. So don't do that. Listen to what I said first, is that initially skip, don't do this apply to each. Just go ahead and set the value to that variable. It will automatically do this apply to each. In fact, it automatically goes ahead and sets the body over there. It just makes your life a lot easier, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give up, rename this variable over here. So I'm going to say the set attachment name variable. And now if I go ahead and do the other one, which is set the actual URL as well, it'll go ahead and take care of that. So I come in, I go ahead and set the URL. The URL is called as absolute URI. And now this is a question that I get asked, is that what is the difference between URI and URL? And you can read some heavy documentation on that, but this is the best way that I understand it, and you can explain that to literally in few sentences, is that the URI and URL are almost the same, except URL, if you click on it, it takes you to a browser and it shows you that address of that link. URI is different over there. URI is also an address to a specific thing, a data or a link or something, but it's not something that you can view on the browser. So that's kind of the big difference over there. It'll still take you a link. It is a link, but it's not something that you use in the browser. Okay, that's kind of the big difference between URI and URL. So hopefully that kind of helps and an easier way for you to understand that. So rename that, and I'm going to call that as the set attachment URL. Nice. So we've taken care of the attachments piece over here. Now let's actually function on the real reason why we are here, which is the approval ones. So now I'm going to come over here, we'll go to the approval, and in the approval, the ones that we are going to click on the approval, the ones we're going to focus on is the stand and wait for an approval. That's the whole reason why I'm doing this video over here. Now, sorry, not stand, I said stand. I said start and wait for an approval. Now in the start and wait for an approval, there's a few different options available. So let's actually take a look at those. One is the approval type, main thing, the approval type. And in the approval type, if you notice, all said and done, it actually classifies into just two options. There is the approve and reject and the custom responses. So in the approve and reject, again, I mean, there's ways to go ahead and say, is everybody need to approve, or as long as the first person approves? And then the same thing in the custom responses, does everybody need to respond, or as long as one person responds over there? The main difference between the approve and reject and the custom responses is pretty much exactly what the title states, is that in the approve and reject, it only gives you two options, whether you want to approve it or you want to reject it. And when that email notification comes to you, there literally are just two buttons. There's the approve and then there's the reject, nothing else. Custom responses is pretty slick because that gives you the flexibility to add more buttons basically in your email notification that comes to you saying, hey, is it a approve or a reject, or is there an approve reject maybe, or is there a maybe or need more information or reject? It gives you that flexibility. And if you noticed, it gives you more than two options over there, because it was just approve and reject, and the custom one gives you more over there. So that's the big difference over here. So if I come over here and I would say custom responses, so wait for all responses, basically it goes ahead and gives me the option that here, this is where you go ahead and start typing in the option to go ahead and say approve. All right, I'm going to say need more information. Now, I will go ahead and say reject. All right, let's make it easier. And if you go ahead and click on this button over here, it actually shows you how we can go ahead and put that in a code format as well, right? Much easier. The reason this is helpful is because if we do have a few of them, which you've got in a OneNote somewhere, you can just copy and paste that. But after that, everything is pretty much the same. So in my title, I'm going to say that your approval is required for, say, claim ID, and the ID number, I'll go ahead and grab that from the SharePoint side. So items created, do that. Assigned to, now watch what's going to happen. In the assigned to, moment I put in assigned to, it is going to go and put that in and apply to each approve. And that's a very important step. Now, the reason the applied, multiple people are going to come in is because in the assigned to, I've gone ahead and put in more people in the SharePoint list. So if you don't remember that, we come back to the SharePoint list, we go into settings, list settings over here, and in the list settings for the approvers, we went ahead and actually gave multiple allow multiple selections over here. That was the option shown up over here. And I wanted to give that flexibility to the end users to do that. So now watch what happens. If I go over here now, it's scrolling down. And if I go ahead and select the approver's emails, watch what's going to happen. It'll go at this and it puts it into another apply to each. So at this point, it is a good idea to go ahead and actually name all of them. So I say apply to each approver. And then you can also go and save that. That way, because we're going to be leveraging these two in a few other steps, and you want to know which apply is which apply. All right, moving along. So we did that, and I'm going to go ahead and now say my links. So in the links section, I'm going to go ahead and put the first link is item link is actually going to be the attachment's URL, and the item description is going to be the attachment's name. That's basically all I need over here. That's the key thing, isn't that? Now, in the details, you can go ahead and put in a lot of information, but here's what I want to tell you. Details doesn't allow heavy, rich text or HTML format. What that means is that if you were to put in this link over there, it will not show up as a URL, a button, or a text with an underline. It won't show that up. It'll actually provide you the entire link over there. All right. Okay. You don't trust me? Let's go and just put that in as a over this one over here. I'm putting that in the details. I'm putting that in the link description. You will see what happens over there. And now let's just go and test this, because what I've done is I've gone ahead and put custom responses, and I'm doing wait for all responses. Let's go and test that. All right. This is actually a good time to test it. So I'll go ahead and say save. And I'll come back over here. I'm going to put in a new item. And a new item is I'm going to say test number 1. And I'll put in 2 people. I'll put in myself, Daniel. I'll put in another employee. And I'm going to go ahead and click on save. So that went in over here. You see we got the approvers. We got that. The ID automatically got generated. And now this thing should go ahead and kick off. Okay, so it is going ahead and running. So I'm going to click on it. It is running. It's actually showing me the flow running. And so far everything is good. So let's take a look at it, right? This was all the initialize. That's nothing fancy over there. Initialize, nothing fancy. Went ahead and grabbed the attachments. I didn't put an attachment. We'll test that later. But over here now, in the apply to each, it is actually going ahead and waiting. So what we'll do is we'll start actually getting 2 email notifications. One email will come to me and the other email will go to Gabriel. So let's watch over there. All right, so the first one came through. Remember, it was the item number 15. That's why the claim ID came over here. And see, voila, right there are those 3 buttons that you got over here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click on approve. And in the approve, it gives me the option to go and put in the comments. And in the comments, I can say approved and please expedite the process. Click on submit. So that's what Daniel said. Now, because of the way that I've set it up right now in the flow, until and unless Daniel has approved it, only then does Gabriel get the approval over there. Because if you noticed, Gabriel and Daniel didn't get it at the same time. It does not by default go through simultaneously. See, now that you see that email notification has come to Gabriel because Daniel went ahead and approved it. All right, I want to kind of emphasize on that. And over here, again, same thing. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and say I'll reject. This is not my employee. I'll go ahead and click on submit. So I kind of need you to understand that, because even that's where the confusion is, that in the apply to all, and it is, the whole concept is to, wait for an approval. By default, it does not go out concurrently or simultaneously to everybody. It goes in a specific step of scenario. And I've noticed one thing is specifically on the SharePoint side, and I can prove that to you, is that when I come over here on the SharePoint, the way it sends out is exactly the way I selected the approvers. So if you noticed over here, I went ahead and did that for Daniel Christian and Gabriel Christian, which is why Daniel got the email notification first for the approval. After Daniel approved it, it went to Gabriel. So let's actually do another test. I'm going to go ahead and do now test number 2. This time I'll go and put in as Gabriel first. Then I'll do Daniel. And now let's have some fun and just put some attachments as well. 2020 attachments, achievements. Click on save. It goes through. Remember, I put Gabriel first. So if all my hypothesis, we can prove over here at 16. test number 2, which is what I typed in. Now Gabriel's first and Daniel is second. So if my hypothesis is correct, Gabriel, which is for claim number 15, his email will come through first over here, right? So let's watch. Aha, this one came through over here. Claim number 16. Wait, let me just go check over there. That's claim number 15, so we already did that. So I don't have to worry about that. Let's go back over here. Come back over here. That's claim number 15. But does it make sense now? And do you understand how that's working? It's all based on how you added that selection on the SharePoint side. Because before, for claim number 15, Daniel got the notification first, but Gabriel got it afterwards, and now it's vice versa. That's a little important tidbit that you need to understand over there. So we'll go back over here now, and I'm going to say that approve says yes, approved gladly. Submit that. Goes through. And then afterwards, now you'll see that a notification will come over here for that claim number 16, the second one, because Gabriel has gone ahead and approved it. Now it'll come over here to Daniel, because I'm also on the approvers list. So watch. And there. Now I also got that approval over here. And do you see what I meant over there in that details section over there in the approval? It doesn't behave like a rich text over there. And I proved it to you because right in the link section, this thing works. It works as a link. But I took that exact same thing. Remember that URL variable that we created? I put that over here in the details, and it goes ahead and strips off the URL, and it just shows the URL over here. So just kind of keep that in mind, because sometimes people treat that this approval process as if it's an email that is getting sent to you. Yes, it is an email that is sent to you, but it is not like the Outlook send email action. This is an approvals action that's going over here, and the approvals detail is not the same as your Outlook emails subject body. All right, kind of keep that in mind. It is not the same, and I proved that to you because it went ahead and stripped off the link and actually displayed the entire link over here, which is why links are more useful, and you want to put all the stuff in the links. All right. So let's continue now. I've already shown you, some really neat stuff, but I want to finish off on the approval side. So let's go back over here. Let's go in here. And, oh, cool. So it went ahead and completed both of them successfully. Well, actually, that one's still running because I think it's just pending something. So let's go back in. And I want to continue now with two things. First of all, I want to go and save that data. I want to show you how I can go ahead and save that data in a very nice and concise format. Because if you notice, I want to save those comments over here. So let me kind of at least walk you through that piece over here. All right, so we did the right down to the apply to each. And over here, we're going to start back on the start and wait for the response approval. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time over here before I go and show you the other stuff, is the whole process of the start and wait for an approval. What we did was we went ahead and selected the approval type, which was the custom responses, and we said the wait for all responses. This over here, the approve and reject for everyone must approve, is the exact same as the wait for all responses. The only difference is we don't get these response option types. We only go ahead and get the options to go ahead and it's either going to be approved or it's going to be rejected. That's all it shows over there. All right, so kind of keep that in mind. And it's kind of interesting how this is showing that over here. Sometimes you kind of go ahead and have these issues over there. So if it does go ahead and make a little hiccup over there, you can always go ahead and delete this, which is what I'll do. I'll just go ahead and delete it, and we'll go ahead and add the new approval form process over here. So I'll say the approvals, and in the approvals, I'm going to say start and wait for an approval. And this one is now going to be is that everyone must approve. Now in the everyone must approve, it's the same process as how we did for wait for all responses. But what happens is, it's what you just noticed over here, is that when I went and selected Gabriel first or Elijah or Daniel first, it always goes ahead and it does send it to everybody, but it sends people in a consistent order. It doesn't go ahead and send it to everybody simultaneously. But there's a fix for that, and the fix is basically you come over here on the top right, you go ahead and select it on the settings, and then select. Actually, it's not on that one over here. I did that. There's a trick for that, and the trick is you go to the apply to each. You don't do it on the set and wait for an approval. You do it on the apply to each. In the apply to each, you go to settings and you turn on this little ray of sunshine, which is concurrency control. And it's by default it is off. You can go and turn that on. What concurrency does is that every other step in the apply to each, those go ahead and run simultaneously, and that's kind of very important over there for you to understand the pros and cons of that, because the way you're building a flow needs to work with this. So for example, in my situation, I'm just going ahead and sending out these email notifications, and it works really well. And therefore, I want all these email notifications to go through at the same time. And that's why it's fine that if it runs in a concurrency fashion. But if you have certain steps where I need this one to run, then I want to capture that data, I need the second one to run, then concurrency is not for you over there. So kind of think about it, that this sounds like a sweet idea, but it might be that double-edged sword which can come back and hurt you. So kind of keep that in mind. Other thing I do is the degree of parallelism. I leave that to the default 20. I can slide this all the way to 50. What that basically means is that the way Power Automate is built as far as its performance is that they're good enough to saying that, I think for the system to function in a good speedy way, we are allowing 50 of these to go ahead and run in a parallel way. Anything after 50, it's going to be in a queue for a while, and then it'll go and kick off after that. The default is 20, and if Power Automate thinks that the default of 20 should be good, I'm going to go with 20. Because think about it, it's very few chance that I'm going to send out these to 20 people at the same time. If you do, then leave it at 20, but up to the max, you can only go up to 50, which will go out at the same time. So kind of keep that in mind, all right? So I'm going to leave it at the default 20. I'll go and click on done. And now I'll just go ahead and say everyone must approve. And here was the same thing that I did. Your request is needed for ID. I'll grab that. It was not from the get attachments. It is from the, scroll down a little too fast. Right here, item is created. Assigned to, the assigned to is going to come into, and watch, when I do that, it's quite possible that it might put another apply to each in there. So we'll, approvers claims. And after that, in the details, we went and did that, so we'll just go and skip that for now. Attachments, link is the URL. Attachments name is the name. We'll do that. And everything else, I'm going to just leave that off over here in the attachments and all that stuff. I'm going to leave that off. So hide that over here. And remember, the big thing that we did over here is we're going to go ahead and see that run simultaneously. So let me go and now click on save. And let's test that. I'm going to go ahead and click save. Yeah, I did that save. Now let's go and add our third test. So I'm going to do test number 3. Approvers again. This time let's go and, who cares? They're going through simultaneously. So I'll still, for sake of testing, I'll do both at that over there. Go ahead and add an attachment as well. Save. So this is number 17. So number 17 is the one that we're looking for, just to help you keep in mind. And let's see what happens. Oh, so I see the number 17 came up over here, but it should be running simultaneously. So if everything did work well, we should show up on the other employees link. And there you go. So it's number 17. This person over here, which is Gabriel. Gabriel got the email approval over there. Daniel got the email approval as well. So they're working now simultaneously, just by that one little change that we did, not in the approval section, but in the apply to each, and it works. So now I'm just going to go ahead and say, approved. Send the assets overnight. Just in case if this is something for hardware request. So I went ahead and did that. Now for my email over here, I'll go same thing there. Approve. Says send the expedite the process. Say expedite the process. Go ahead and click on submit, and that also went through over here quite successfully. And that's pretty neat, right? Because I went ahead and showed you a couple of fun things, but that sending out things simultaneously or in a parallel fashion is a very important process over there. And even though there's a flexibility, there's a limit that you want to maintain. And I kind of showed you both of those. So what I want to kind of finish up the final piece of this puzzle over here, which is, let's go back to inside the flow over here and click on the edit piece. And what I want to do is now focus on saving the data. Now, again, this is going to be that very interesting scenario, is that when I add something in, it's going to automatically put that apply to each over here. So when you're trying to replicate this in your environment, follow the steps that I'm doing it. Don't go ahead and first put in and apply to each over here. Don't do that. Follow the steps. And when you follow the step, it'll actually go ahead and automatically generate that second apply to each. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to come in and I'm going to first put in a compose action over here, and I will be using this compose action. In fact, I'll go ahead and say that this is the one that I'm going to use the compose for approved, and in here I'm going to go ahead and drop in something which will say what was the person's name or the display name and what was the comments. So I'm going to go ahead and capture from here, and I'm going to say response approver's name. Aha, see what happened over here? It went ahead and did this, went ahead and put that approver's name. But let me just finish this off over here, and then I will also go ahead and capture the comments. See, I kind of understand why Power Automate does what it does. It really helps us, but it can make things a little confusing at times, which is why it's very important how you follow along when you're replicating something, especially when you're, if you're seeing it on somebody else's, which in this case you're seeing mine, and you're going to replicate that on yours. It's best you do it exactly how I do it, which in this case was put that compose statement, because it went ahead and added that apply to each again. But if you went and add your own apply to each, and then you came in and added that compose, it's going to add a second apply to each, and it gets a little confusing. So kind of follow the steps how I'm showing it over here. Now, just for the sake of my sanity, I will rename this apply to each, and this apply to each is apply to each response. All right, that's for the approvers. I want to apply to each response right here. Now what I want to do is I want to actually set a condition. The condition is, was the outcome a approve or reject? Because based on that, I'll go ahead and update either one of those columns. Now what I need to do is, in fact, I want to go ahead and get a condition, and in the condition I'm going to say what was the outcome, and then the outcome is here. Was the outcome an approve? The outcome was basically whatever was selected over here. Approve, not approved, not past tense, it's just approve. And this, I'll go ahead and grab that right over here, because I actually got that ready for the if it was approved, then go ahead and basically put that, update this section over here, this compose statement. And once I go ahead and get that compose statement, I'll just go ahead and say I'm going to append this to the variable. Watch this variable over here, all right? I'll put that, I've got a variable which I'm going to go ahead and set now. Come on, set variable. And the set variable, this is for the approve variable, and the approve variable I'm going to use the compose approved, the compose approved. Now somebody must be thinking, say, Daniel, why are you doing it this way and that way? The reason I'm doing it that way is because if you were to go ahead and put this format in over here, the variable will go ahead and strip off that middle hyphen, and it'll go ahead and strip off any other thing that you do. In fact, I'm going to even put over here a space and a colon. The reason I do that is because there's multiple approval names which are coming over here. Then you will be able to separate that. Okay, this is one batch, colon, this is another batch. It kind of helps over there. But if you did this inside over here, it strips off the middle dash, and then it'll also go and scrape off the colon over here. So doing it in the compose goes ahead and puts it over here. And then outside, I'll go ahead and put it way outside. And the next step is where I'm going to go ahead and put the update into the SharePoint list. And that's where, and another reason I'm going ahead and putting the compose, because I can't use compose outside this little area. I can't. It doesn't allow me. Power Automate by design will not allow me, but it will allow me to go ahead and fetch the variable value over here. So there's a combination of why I am using this compose. The reason to use this compose is to get this nice syntax or the format to post into the variable, but then I have to use this variable because that's the only way I can go ahead and grab its information outside this little container section over there. So it kind of makes sense why I'm doing what I'm doing. There's literally a method to this madness. So I'll go ahead and now rename this section to rename, and I'm going to say, append to approval string variable. Now, if you've already understood, you say, yeah, Daniel, do you need to do the exact same thing on this side? It says, yep, I do. Now, I could go ahead and even use the copy and paste functionality, but for the sake of this one, I'll show that to you. That way you just have a good understanding of what's going on. Same thing. I'm just going to say this as compose rejected, and it's actually the exact same thing. Is going ahead and grabbing the approver response approver name space dash space, going ahead and grabbing the comment space, and then the colon, and then after that going ahead and setting the value to the variable. So I go to the variable, set the value to the variable. This one is going to be for the rejected one, and then the rejected one, I go ahead and grab that variable, compose rejected there, and then I'll just rename that to also append to rejected string variable. And then finally, I got to go outside. So not this action, but actually a new step. And in that new step, it's going to be for SharePoint. And the SharePoint, I click over here, and this is going to be for the update, and it's going to be the update item. And in the update, I go and put in then here, search for that site, go ahead and search for the list. See, where are you? That was the one here. Grab the ID. Best that I grab the ID from the original when an item is created. And this is where I go ahead and pause and tell you why at the initial side of the video about 30 minutes ago, I recommended why you should go ahead and make that title column unrequired. This is why you do it, because right now, even though this is just an update and I already have a value assigned to the title, because in the SharePoint column I have it as a required, here I will have to go ahead and put that information in. So I got to go over here, and I got to go when the item is created, and I got to put that in. So bottom line is that when you're using either Power Apps or Power Automate, let these two services control what is required and not required. But over here on the SharePoint list side, you come back to the settings, list settings, and I recommend that you go ahead and take off these required things over here. Because let all that be controlled on the Power Apps and the Power Automate side. Just don't let that control over here. Because again, a great scenario I gave you is that in the title one, I have to keep adding that again and again. And who knows, some issue or some mistake can happen where that title was updated, or you need it to be updated. Scenarios can happen, and you just keep getting requested to add this again and again when you actually don't. So that's my recommendation, is that I come over here now, I go ahead and now make that as no, click on OK. And what I'll have to do on the flow, let me just finish this off. What I'll have to do on the flow is I got to come back on the Power Automate side, and I will actually I can take that off. It may not accept it, we'll see. Okay, the approved comments were the approval var, rejected comments were the rejected var, and I'll go ahead and save that. See, it says the title is required over here. So what I got to do is I got to go ahead and now, I'm just deleting this. Go ahead and save it. Get out of it. Come back into the edit. Now if I go and put that update, which kind of makes it a lot easier because now I don't have to keep scrolling in. I come back over here. I come back into SharePoint. SharePoint, select that. Over here, I type in the update item. Select our site address, POC. Select our list name, which was the concurrent approval step. Grab the ID from the original one. And if you notice, Power Automate is smart enough because right now there is not that asterisk over there, which is required. If you remember, you can always rewind back and go. I said rewind. If you scroll back and go a little bit to the beginning side, you will actually see that asterisk over there. So kind of, this is why I do what I do. In fact, this ID needs to go over here. Got a little too excited. Got to make that correction. I don't need to put anything in the ID now. I can just come over here, put in the approver comments as the approval ones, rejected comments as the rejected, save it, and this time it will go through. Cool, and we are done with the flow. Now all we need to do is do a test. So let's come back over here and go through a full thorough test. Go to now test number 4. Let's do the exact same thing. We'll go ahead and add 2 users, add an attachment, save. It'll kick off. The saving is basically for the attachment that's over here. We'll be able to see any second that the flow will run, but we're going to go ahead and focus our attention on the emails. So let me just go and click outside because there's a new email that's coming over here. Same thing on my side. Oh, something where I can get rid of that. Let me go and now wait. Nice. Did you hear that? I know it came on the Outlook email side, and any second now it should show up over here as well. So since it's on the Outlook, right here it is. It's that number 18 over here. I'm going to go and click on approve. It says send the assets with overnight mail. Click on submit. And then the other approval over here, again, I'm going to click on approve. The link also came through. It said provide a monitor with wireless keyboard and mouse. Submit. So we want to make sure again that I've approved it in both the areas. Approved it. Both the users or managers have approved it and they put in comments. Now let's see how Flow goes ahead and behaves with that way. So if I go in straight to my SharePoint list over here. All right, so we see over here it came from Daniel Christian, and it looks like we made a little mistake over here because somehow it's only showing Daniel even though the flow completed. And the reason why that happened is we made a mistake. We did not put the append to, we didn't use the append function over here. So let me show you what that means. Let's go and fix that problem really quick and we'll do another test. Is in the set variable, I'm going to go ahead and use the variables, and in the variable is going to be append to string variable. That's the big one. So click that, it's going to be for the approvals one, and in the approvals one we go ahead and add that nice output over here, and the output comes from compose approved one. So I got that, and then this one I'll go ahead and first make sure that it is the approved to approval string variable 2. Did that. Let's fix this problem over here as well. Go ahead and say append to, say variable. It's going to be the append to string. This append to string is actually going to be the rejected one, and the rejected one we're going to go ahead and grab this guy, the compose function, that one. And that is how we'll know the difference. It's going to append to rejected string variable 2. Cool. So we got to go ahead and now update that over here, because not this one. Well, actually it is continue that one. It'll still be that one. So approved comments will be still the approval one. Right. And in fact, because we are still uploading it to the same one. So I can go and get rid of this, delete that. I can go and get rid of this, delete that. I'm glad we were able to catch this mistake over here. All right, so save it. Now what we'll do is we'll go and test it, but we'll also do a double test. One will approve it and the other one will be rejected. So I'm going to go add that next thing over here. It's test number 5. I put that in as Gabriel. This time over here, I put in Daniel. There, get an attachment, came through, okay, save. It will run through really fast. Saving done, shows up over here, the flow start. Let me just go and click on that so you know then there's a new one coming. Click on that, there's a new one coming, and now we wait. We'll try to even replicate the same comments, so we'll see what happens over there. Nice. Did you hear that? So it came up on the Outlook. Let's go take a look at the Outlook over here. This is for the Gabriel. So go ahead. Now Gabriel will go and reject it. So Gabriel rejected it. It says not my employee. So he goes ahead and rejects it. Hit submit. Well, in the Outlook, when it comes to Daniel, Daniel will say approve. All right, send monitor with wireless keyboard and mouse, send with overnight shipping. You go and submit that. That went through completely, finished up nicely. Workflow should finish any second now. And we just come back to our SharePoint list and we'll watch to see what happens. And there you go, the last one. See, so the Daniel's comment, it was an approval one if you remember, it was approved. Therefore, it only showed in the approved comments. Gabriel rejected it and they said not my employee. So that way it shows in the rejected comments over there. So we were able to successfully now go through and finish off all the approval section and it worked. So let's overview all that we just did in the last 50 some minutes over here. One of the things was we went ahead and did specifically use the wait for the approval one. That's the one that we did. We went and tried out both of them, the approve and reject and the customized ones. And the customized ones, I showed you the different button options that are available there. So that was a pretty cool thing. Second thing is I showed you by default, it will go ahead and send it in a synchronized way, which is one after the other approvals. And that one of the other approvals completely depends on how you selected the approvers or the names of the approvers on the SharePoint list. That was very important over there. But when you went into the apply to each, not in the approvals advanced settings, but in the apply to each, and you set that up to concurrent, each of the approvals went out simultaneously to all of the people over there. And in the apply to each for the concurrency, we left it at the default 20 over there. And then finally, in the email section over there, when it went out, we were able to go ahead and capture the comments, whether it was approved or reject, and the comments, that metadata. We were able to go ahead and capture that and then go ahead and update our SharePoint list over there. So this was a whole bunch of things we covered in this section over there. Hopefully this was helpful to you. And as always, keep power automating.